again. Thank you so much for coming back and checking out Cultured and Studious. My name is Elle and I'm your host. Okay, bear with me. I believe that this is the third and final segment of how to write an argumentative essay for the GED exam. No promises, there might be a part 4, but as of today, I feel like this might be the final bow to wrap up this segment. In this video, I'm going to review the things I've already taught you, but if you have not seen those videos in depth, I need you to go back and revisit them because they're gems all throughout those things. How do you identify these things? We're going to talk about how to identify the good parts of an essay, what makes an essay a bad essay, and when you're able to do that comfortably, in turn, that makes the essay that you will write even better, right? That we talked about that in part 1. Part 2, we talked more about the structure of the paragraphs. What are they looking for? How do I organize my paper? We even showed some examples of essays. And this video, I want to focus on the different types of styles you can set your paper up in. I would like to do a grammar at a glance little lesson for you, and I truly believe that by the end of these 3 videos, these segments, you should have everything you need to be successful when it comes to writing this essay for the GED. Let's get to it. All right, you guys, so I want to review briefly some of the things that we have talked about in previous videos. I want to point out specifically and just briefly run through how to identify the strengths and the weaknesses in an essay, because both essays that are presented to you, both of them will have strengths and weaknesses, right? So it doesn't really matter which one you choose, you just have to choose and explain it properly, right? And I think in the essay question, it tells you to use evidence from both articles. So I will not tell you read one and just focus on that. I will tell you to read both. I'm telling you to read both because the answer question is telling you to use, the essay question is telling you to use evidence from both essays. So I wouldn't suggest only reading one essay to get the full points. So when you're analyzing those arguments, how do we know what's a weak essay? In our previous video, and if you're unsure because I'm just going to breeze through, you need to go back and watch it. We discussed faulty logic or fallacies, things that make something false, right? It's just a skewed way of thinking that if the essay you're reading is doing this, it's a sign of a weakness, right? So when you are writing your response in your own essay that you have to write for this GED test, you can use that as a point. You can say essay 2 was better than essay 1 because these are the weaknesses of essay 1, right? You can point out 1, you can point out 2. This is helpful information for you to write your own essay because now you know what you're looking for. One of the things we discussed was jumping on the bandwagon, right? That's faulty logic. We discussed personal attack, right? Am I attacking the person's argument or am I attacking their character? And if I'm attacking their character, I might not have a leg to stand on to really prove my point. If that's all I have to do is attack character, that's like low bearing fruit. That's a sign of a weakness of the argument. We talked about slippery slope when the author is just saying this will lead to this, that leads to that, that leads to that, but there's no evidence to support that. It's just opinion and like a doomsday essay or a doomsday paragraph in an essay that doesn't necessarily make it true just because it sounds good. We talked about either or thinking and what does that look like. Usually there are more than 2 sides to a story. There's 2 ways to complete a task. And if the person that you are reading their essay, their argument, and they're only showing 2 sides of the story, it's either this or that, nothing in between. A lot of times there are other options in between. And if this person is only presenting one thing as correct against something else, it's either or thinking. It's faulty. There are many things in between that could be a solution to the issue. And those are a few different fallacies or faulty logics that are embedded in these essays. And like I said, both essays have flaws. Both essays have strengths. So when you can pick up on these things in an essay, pull it out right there. Here's something I can put in my paper. Oh, the author just did a personal attack. I can use that in my own essay, right? So what makes a good essay? What are some strengths? Let me rephrase it. What are some indicators of a strong essay? A strong essay is going to include expert opinion, right? It's not just Joe Schmo off the street telling you how he feels and making up facts, right? The essay is going to include expert opinion. The essay is going to include relevant statistics from reliable sources. The essay is going to include studies, polls, surveys done, and they won't be vague about it. They will get very specific. They're going to use exact examples. So now if your essay is using vague information, that's a sign of a weak argument. If the essay is using outdated facts and statistics, it's a sign of a weak essay. Why are you going back to studies from the 50s to talk about what we got going on right now? There was nothing new you could pull from to help prove your point. And if they're only using old statistics, it's a sign of a weak argument. Or studies. Old studies or old statistics. Pay attention to that detail, because if I didn't tell you that today, how would you know? You wouldn't. So there's all these little ticks, there's all these little things weaved into these essays on the GED test that once you're aware of what they're giving you, you can perform a little bit better. We talked about author's bias. Pay attention to who is giving you the information, and it's usually right there underneath the title. Does this person have something to gain from getting you to believe what they want? Is it going to make their business a little bit better? Pay attention to where did these people get their facts and statistics from. I remember one of these essay examples being about, should we have GMOs? Should GMOs be labeled? But one of the statistics that one of the studies that they provided as evidence to prove their point was conducted by a GMO food producer. Can I trust you? You have something to gain here. If I'm trying to prove my point about GMO foods may be dangerous, should I really trust the studies done by people who make GMO food? Probably not. Or are they objective? Are they maybe biased, or maybe they're leaving out some information? It's possible. So pay attention to that detail. We also talked about counter arguments, and if your author can include a counter argument, it shows that they're pretty logical. They can recognize someone else's point and maybe offer other solutions, right? Those are good things. Those are good things to notice. Those are strengths of one of these essays that you'll be looking at. And the better you are at identifying the strengths and the weaknesses, you can pull that out and write your own essay. So the next part of the video, I want to discuss different ways to set your essay up. How do we do this? How can we be successful? And I truly believe after you watch in depth all 3 of these videos, you should be just fine. Okay, so the different ways that you can write this essay. You can do it where you have your introduction, you make your claim, and you say Article 1 is better than Article 2 because give your 2 reasons why, or 3. You can set it up from strongest to weakest point. You can, body paragraph 1 could be your strongest point with your evidence, and you explain it down to your weaker points, right? The only con of that is you might end in a low note, but there's nothing wrong with it. You did what the essay required. Or you can start with the weaker point and then make your points that are going to be stronger, right? That you have more support for. You can do it that way. You can chunk them together. You can make body paragraph 1 talk about a strength from essay 1. Body paragraph 2 can be a weakness of essay 2. And body paragraph 3 can just be a little comparison of the both. There's different ways you can do this, and as long as you're consistent, as long as there's like progression of ideas through your essay, you got it. You can be successful here. It's just knowing what they're looking for and being able to put the words on paper. It's also being able to identify the strengths and the weaknesses and put them on paper. Each paragraph that you write when it comes to your body paragraph 1, body paragraph 2, body paragraph 3, make sure they stay on topic. If you're going to introduce a point, stay right there. Get the evidence from the text, put it in that paragraph, and then that's the next part of the peel, your point, your evidence, that part where you explain it. When you explain it, you say, this is a strength because blah, 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 blah. They're using expert opinion. They used a credible source of information. They used facts and statistics to prove their point. Body paragraph 2 can say your point, your evidence. Take that sentence from that essay and put it in yours. Here's the evidence of him using a personal attack. Here's where he called the mayor a bimbo. Here's an example of the personal attack where he says anyone who likes to recycle is an idiot. Use the evidence of where they said it and then explain this is a personal attack. The author is using faulty logic. This is an example of either or thinking. This is where the author is using faulty logic. Or you can, highlight the strength and say, this is an example of giving expert opinion. So this is a strength to this essay, right? It's very possible when you know what is being asked of you. So the next part of this video, I want to do just a quick grammar at a glance lesson. What are these things? How can these little bits of information help me out when it comes to writing my own essay? Maybe you haven't written an essay in a really long time, and these small little things can be of use to you. Let's get to it. I want to discuss commas and how to use them. Commas can be used to make lists. You use commas to separate a list of items. It's like giving a little breath between things. For example, I need to buy eggs, milk, and bread. See how the commas separate each item and make it easier to read. Commas also help with introductory phrases. So when you start a sentence with a phrase that sets the stage, give it a comma. It's like saying, oh, there's a little bit of information before we get to the main part. So for example, After school, we went to the park. The comma after school tells us that something else is coming up. Commas can also be used when you're joining sentences. If you have two sentences that can stand on their own and you want to connect them, and you're going to use a word like and, but, or however, you use a comma before that word, and it's like a pause before moving to the next sentence. For example, she loves to swim, but she hates running. The comma helps us take a breath before you move to the next sentence. Or I'll say next part of the sentence because we're combining two full sentences. You can also use commas as appositives. When you want to give more information about a noun, use a comma to set it apart. It's like saying, I have to tell you a little bit more about this thing. For example, my dog, Chance, is a Shih Tzu. The comma before and after Chance lets us know it's an additional detail. The last way I'm going to explain to you when you use a comma is a direct address. When you address someone directly in a sentence, it's like saying their name. Use a comma to show it. It's like saying, hey, I'm talking to you directly now. For example, John, could you pass the salt? The comma after John directly tells us we're speaking to John. Remember, using commas is all about adding clarity and rhythm to your writing. They help the readers understand the flow of your thoughts and take appropriate pauses. So use them wisely, but don't go overboard with too many unnecessary commas. Just sprinkle them in where they're needed. So next, let's talk about apostrophes. Apostrophes show possession, contractions, or missing letters. So apostrophes come in handy when something belongs to someone or something else. It's like saying, this thing belongs to that person or thing. For example, Sarah's car is shiny. The apostrophe before the S tells us that the car belongs to Sarah. When it comes to contractions, apostrophes also help us combine words and make them shorter. It's like saying, let's squish these two words together and save some space on the paper. For example, I can't believe it. The apostrophe in can't shows that it is a contraction of cannot. Apostrophes also show missing letters. When you want to show that some letters are missing in a word, you can use an apostrophe. It's like saying, yeah, we left out some letters. For example, I don't know what to do. The apostrophe in don't tells us that the O is missing from do not. Remember, apostrophes aren't for making words plural. They're not here for that. So don't go adding apostrophes when you want to make a regular word plural. So let's talk about capitalization. This may be old news to you, but it's new news to someone somewhere, and I don't want to make any assumptions about what people know and what they don't. Some people have lost track of this information or maybe even never had a teacher teach it to them. So let's start here. Capitalization helps distinguish and emphasize certain words. When it comes to sentences, proper nouns, and titles, those things always are capitalized. The first letter of any sentence will always be capitalized, always. So in this example here, we have the sun is shining brightly. Capital T on the. When it comes to proper nouns, you capitalize the names of people, places, months, days of the week, specific titles. Here are some examples. I live in New York City, capital N, capital Y, capital C. My birthday is in December, capital D on the month of December. Dr. Johnson is my neighbor, capital D on doctor, because that's his title. Something interesting when it comes to that many people don't know is that titles of works also get capitalized. So you capitalize the main words and titles such as books, movies, or songs. So for example, have you read To Kill a Mockingbird? Capital T, capital K, capital M. And because it is a title, it's also put in quotation marks. I want you to remember, capitalization is not needed for common nouns unless they appear at the beginning of a sentence or are part of a title. So I'm going to go over the homophone, the meaning, and then I'm going to give it in a sentence to give you an example. There and there. THEIR shows possession. Their car is parked outside. THERE refers to a place. Meet me there at 3 p.m. Your and your. Your, Y-O-U-R, shows ownership. Is this your pen? Your, Y-O-U'-R-E, is the contraction of you are. And we just talked about contractions, didn't we? You're doing great in your studies. Its. ITS shows possession for it. The cat wagged its tail. Its IT''S is the contraction of it is. It's a pleasure to meet you. There and there. THEY''RE is a contraction of they are. They're going to the park this weekend. THEIR shows possession. Their house is lovely and well maintained. Here and here. Here, HERE refers to a place. Come over here and sit with us. Here, HEAR is to perceive sound with your ears. Can you hear the music playing? 2, 2, and 2. TOO means also or very. I want some ice cream too. TWO is the number 2. There are 2 apples on the tree. TO indicates direction or action. She wants to go to the park. Weather and weather. Weather, WHETHER, introduces alternatives. I can't decide whether to go or stay. Weather, WEATHER, refers to atmospheric conditions. The weather is sunny today. I personally get mixed up with this one, I'm not even gonna lie to you. Affect versus effect. Affect, AFFECT, to influence or produce a change. Lack of sleep can affect your mood. Effect, with an E, EFFECT, is a result or outcome. The new policy had a positive effect. Brake and brake. Brake, BRAKE, a device to stop a vehicle. Press the brake pedal to stop the car. Break, BREAK, to separate into pieces. Be careful not to break the vase. Allowed and allowed. Allowed, ALLOWED, permitted or given permission. Smoking is allowed in this area. Aloud, audible or out loud. Read the passage aloud to the class. Homophones can be tricky, but if you practice them, you'll be able to distinguish them easily. And like I said, it's the most noticeable errors a writer can make. All you have to do is practice, and you will grow to be better at this, I promise. And lastly, I want to share 5 common writing mistakes with you all.
When you are aware of these few things, you can be intentional about trying your best to avoid making these mistakes. Again, my name is Elle. Thank you so much for tuning in to Cultured and Studious. I hope that this information was helpful to you. And I know with these 3 videos combined, you are going to be able to pass that GED test with flying colors.
You never know, she just might let you on it. Don't let fear hold you, don't place some more.